Today is edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We are bringing you lasted for farming sources and information sponsored by AgriGold. I am Cesar Delgado. I am your host of today's program on the President Day. Today is no markets in Chicago. We were talking about the planting prep for today with FS. I'm joining with Lance Daniel from Grow Marks. We were talking about the planting prep for this year in the Midwest, like in Illinois, Iowa. We were excited about that for the planting season. I have a question about the herbicides with Lance. Otherwise, this is your rural news. Secretary Brooke Rollins is confirmed by the Senate. She is an agriculture secretary in Washington, D.C. Her top priority is crop insurance and the Farm Bill trade. In central Illinois this week is the FA week, though, February 28th. This Thursday is going to be Giving Day for the National FFA in Indianapolis. Finally, that on February 26th will be Ag Outlook in Washington, D.C. This is your rural news for this afternoon. I'm joining with Lance Daniel from Grow Marks. We were talking about the planting prep for this year in the Midwest, like in Illinois, Iowa. We were excited about that for the planting season. What is the fertilizer prices for right now, Lance?
Yeah, good morning, Caesar. So fertilizer pricing has it depends on which product nutrient you're looking at, but for the most part has been steadily increasing over the winter months. We didn't have as good of a fall season with anhydrous ammonia applications here in our territory, so that kind of means you're going to need to get more work done in the springtime, which could lead you to using other products like UAN or urea, depending on kind of what soil type you're working with, and different regions have their unique practices. But by and large, everyone expects a big corn crop this spring, so it's pretty bullish for nitrogen demand, and that has kind of led to with not having an overabundance of supply, that's been firm for nitrogen prices. And so, namely, urea global values have really shot up over the last 45 days, and that's been able to kind of lift UAN and ammonia prices as well. So switching over to phosphates, the supply dynamics have not really changed there relative to where we were a year ago or more. It's been kind of the same story: low global stockpiles, pretty healthy demand. So it's really just keeping availability just pretty tight. So as we're growing these huge yields, as we seem to do every year now, the crops and the soil requires a little more of that replacement values, and we're seeing that healthy demand keep pricing at a little bit of an elevated level.
What is the price for DAP and MAP for right now in central Illinois, Lance?
Yeah, it varies depending on kind of what territory you're at. But I'd say somewhere between, I don't know, 740 to 800, somewhere in that range, depending on where you're at. If you're closer to the river, you're going to see some more aggressive pricing. There's just less freight and throughput costs to get it to where it needs to be. But if you're kind of more at an inland terminal away from a river source, then you're going to expect to see a little bit higher values than that.
Of course.
But one thing we've seen with
concerns about the nitro.
Sorry, I was just going to say one thing we've seen is actually MAP
Go
prices
ahead.
are cheaper today than DAP, which we haven't seen for a little bit. So, less than a year ago, MAP was $100 more expensive than DAP, and now is about a $10 discount to DAP. So, we'll see what happens this spring. But yeah, interesting how the supply dynamics are at play there.
Do you have any concerns about the nitrogen cost from Africa?
Um, I would say, we do import a fair amount from that area. My concern really is, if I'm a grower today, I'm looking at my input spend. Nitrogen is always a healthy amount of that, especially if you're growing corn. But I worry that we could see a little bit of demand destruction. However, one thing that's been positive is, we saw in the January, I think it was the WASDE report, the USDA adjusted their stockpile kind of numbers and ending stocks, and that's been pretty bullish for corn prices. We've seen corn up, essentially $1 from where we were last fall. So that's got growers in a little bit more positive mood. Just looking like maybe they can. Before it was looking like you'd lose money planting corn. Now, we're starting to see some positive signs. And then also some of these ad hoc government payments that may go out here soon. That could be helpful for allowing growers to have some more money to spend on inputs, equipment, that sort of thing. So, if you're trying to grow a big corn crop, you're not going to cut back on your nitrogen rates too much. But yeah, we'll see where things go. It's certainly has been more affordable at times, but again, you kind of need it to grow the crop. So we'll see where things go.
Do you have any concerns about the tariffs? What do you recommend for lock fertilizer prices for potash from Canada?
What do I recommend for potash prices from Canada? Sorry, I just want to make sure I understood the question there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Again, that one kind of depends on what part of the state or which state you're in, but I'd call it, I mean, you're over $400 a ton. I would imagine in most spots, maybe a little bit lower on close to the river on the Illinois there or on the upper Miss. But yeah, I would say anywhere from, 400 to $450 a ton, ballpark in it, depending on where you're at and what time of year that you've contracted those tons.
Of course. Lance, what do you recommend for this planting prep with herbicides to kill the weeds?
Yeah, when I think about weed control in my mind, I immediately go to a well-rounded integrated pest management system. And I think oftentimes a crucial piece of an IPM is the fertility that can go kind of forgotten. But it's super important. If you get that plant off to a healthy, fast start and you spoon feed it with the right nutrients early on in the season that are in a plant available form, you got a healthy root system, that plant is going to be much more tolerant to the stresses that inevitably it's going to face. But that's why it's called an integrated approach. You have to have all aspects of this dialed in. But really, I like to focus on the plant nutrition side of things, as that's where kind of my head is at on a daily basis. But as far as, herbicides specifically, I would just say, consult with your local agronomist or crop specialist to come up with a plan. And ideally, you're doing this in the winter months. Once you know what you're going to be planting, what your intentions are there, you can start to game plan for, generally speaking, what weed pressures you face in certain fields or areas. I would say rotate herbicides with different modes of action. So you're trying to prevent resistance. Maybe you look at some supplemental biological control products that are coming to the market. It seems like more of those are really coming to the chain every year. And, I think as diverse of an approach as you can have, is where I would go. So that way the plants or the weeds aren't getting too resistant to it. And you're just attacking it from different angles, selecting herbicides with residual control. And then obviously, put in there some adjuvants or drift control agents. So you're maximizing performance. You're getting use out of all the product that you're paying for, but also you're reducing the environmental impact. You're not getting drift. Get out there when the weather's optimal, not when it's raining or super windy. So yeah, that would be my recommendation for it. But ultimately, you got to have a plan, a proactive plan that you've put in place with your crop specialist.
What about group 15 as well?
Yeah, I've been in a few presentations on that, but I would tell you that I'm probably not. I'm not an expert in that space, so I wouldn't be able to give you a technical answer or a strategy on that. My day to day, I'm focusing more on the fertilizer side of things, so don't get too exposed to the the herbicide and crop protection market as much.
Do you have any final thoughts on this spring season in the Midwest?
Yeah, I would say, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, but we've seen these USDA revisions give a little bit of a boost to the corn price. The funds have extended their long position in corn. I think it's the longest position they've had in a couple of years heading into a season. So, they're pretty smart people. So we like to watch what they're doing, and usually they have a reason for why they're investing or they see value there. However, we're seeing pretty good weather conditions in South America. So, that's tempering a little bit of the optimism, but, overall good corn rally, that's good for the grower. It's good for, the retailer and the wholesalers. There's more, we like to see the grower in a strong financial position so they can, run their operation smoothly. They can affordably get the inputs that they need for their crop. But this spring we do expect with a little bit tighter of a budget, the higher input spend. You're probably going to see some of your value added or ROI type of products that could see a hit, as growers look to trim what they can from their input spend without sacrificing yield. And I touched on nitrogen pricing earlier and phosphates. We dove into the potash situation a little bit as well. So my overall message there would be don't wait. If you haven't locked in your NPKs for the year, I wouldn't wait any longer. You're probably not going to get a cheaper price until maybe this summer. So, and depending on what happens with, overseas as far as European gas values, they've come off a little bit, but they're still pretty elevated. We're seeing some nitrogen production plants over in that part of the world get scaled back or shut down just due to the expensive inputs for it. So to me, my message would be proactive, get with your crop specialist or your local partner, get a plan in place, lock in your cost on your nutrients, because I don't see them going down at least until, June, July, probably at the earliest.
We'll see about that for next couple weeks. Thanks, Lance. I enjoyed our conversation. Of course, I have you again for next time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. It was a pleasure to speak with you a little bit about some of these topics, and I hope you have a great day.
This is Lance Zimmerman from Grow Marks. Thanks to Lance Daniel from Grow Marks. This been Back Roads of Illinois. I am Cesar Delgado. You have a great day.